So for those of you who are first time with us, yes, we started as regular functional service developers, but very soon we realized that we could help businesses by working smarter, not just by sprinting faster in the Scrum terms. And we started defining serverless not just as a tech stack, but as a pragmatic mindset for solving business problems. And most of us are engineers and we like to engineer, and way too often we focus on the tech tools, not the things the tech tools let you do. So using the analogy from the car mechanics, we enjoy pimping our cars more than driving business forward and taking them places. So that's why we see serverless as a state of mind and a way to focus on business value. And I know that sounds fluffy, so in simple terms, it comes to how you triage the problems. So if the platform has it, you're going to use it. If the market has it, you're going to buy it. If you can change the requirements, then do that. But if you have to build it, then own it. And we believe that this thinking can be applied to any tech stack, even on premise. So this broad definition of serverless allows us to explore various IT topics. And you can see on our YouTube channel, youtube.serverlesstoronto.org, that we have events from 7 years now, and many of them are still highly relevant. So we are witnessing tectonic shifts in the industry and the job market. So now more than ever, we need to support one another, not just to survive, but to thrive in whatever future throws our way. And if you have a non-promotional altruistic topics to share, message on, and me, we'd love to pencil you in. And if there is any important topic in the software world that we are not paying enough attention to, DM us again or mention it in the survey. So we are always open to fresh ideas. And last but not the least, I want to thank Money Publication for supporting us as a knowledge sponsor over 5 years. At every meetup, they generously donate one of their titles. So if you do that same survey, that will help us improve. You will also qualify for their raffle. And for those of you who don't win, Money gave us 45% discount coupon for any of their digital products. So scan this barcode and enjoy the savings if you don't win today. And before I hand the mic to our guest, so I need to answer the question, why this session? So I believe that we are moving beyond the era of productivity into the era of creativity. And as you see, AI is breaking down traditional roles and barriers in software development. So instead of just writing the code faster, it's transforming how we approach software development lifecycle. So tonight, Tim will show how AI-driven workflows go beyond coding tools, and it will demonstrate how AI can become your team. So if you've been wondering how to make AI work for you rather than just around you, you're in the right place. And I feel lucky Tim accepted my invitation to present at our community. So Tim, thank you so much. Floor is yours. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you for inviting me, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Clicking on share. Replace current share. There we go. Okay, so thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about me, but you should know a little bit about me. So I have about 30 years of software engineering experience in different roles, always in the technical roles, always staying very technical. The last couple of years have been, 2 or 3 years have been mainly in the software architecture role. Last year, I started a company called Coding the Future with AI. I also started a YouTube channel by the same name in a Skool community, and we have a few members joining from that community tonight. Where basically I'm helping the community learn. I'm promoting AI and software engineering and helping the community learn as well. And so my mission really is kind of to inspire, motivate folks, because you got to do that first, right? You got to get people to pay attention, because so many people still, I work with a lot of different people, including like from IT leaders to engineers. And so many people still are believing they have lots of time. They don't see what's going on around them. And just because it's not right, it's not apparent right now, doesn't mean it's not happening. The transformation is happening. And so my mission is to basically get folks to recognize that in our industry, right? And then to help ease the pain and transitioning into that. So that's kind of what I'm about here. There are links to my Skool community, YouTube, and my website. What we're going to talk about a little bit tonight are a few things. So as Daniel mentioned, we're going to be talking about AI-driven workflows. So how do we apply this? Because a lot of times, most of the videos you see online are all focused on coding. But anybody who's been a software engineer for any amount of time recognizes that we spend a tiny fraction of our time really writing code. That's changing a little bit now because we're writing so much code with AI. But you know, there's a lot more to developing software products than just writing code. So we need to think about how do we apply this from end to end throughout the whole software lifecycle. Tonight, I'm gonna have to kind of box it in a little bit. So folks that are in the DevOps world, I'm not ignoring you. I just don't have time to get into that kind of side of things. We're gonna kind of go all the way down to the development testing kind of side of things, and we're gonna kind of leave off at that point here. But rest assured, all of these same concepts equally apply to DevOps, monitoring, security scanning, all of these kind of activities as well. So a couple of key themes here. So you might be wondering if you haven't really been using like AI very deeply in your day-to-day work, you might be wondering, is AI very capable? Because there's a lot of focus on the LLMs. And focusing on the LLMs and what LLMs can do misses the point. It's not about AI capability. AI is very capable. We could stop with AI research right now, use the AI models that we have, continue to learn to integrate them, and we would still make leaps and bounds progress over the next year. There's no doubt about that. Now, AI is not slowing down. It hasn't hit a wall, so do not believe that hype either, right? It is not true. But really, the magic is in integrating. So when I say integrating, I mean prompts, good prompts. And we'll see some prompt chains, tune prompts and prompts that work together. And then context, right? Because AI doesn't read your mind, right? Contrary to the way some people kind of look at it. Hey, go develop an app that does X, Y, Z, and I'll come back and it's done. It'll never work that way, by the way. It's not possible. So we have to provide a context, right? We have to say, what are we thinking? We don't always know what we're thinking up front, so we have to come out and provide more context. It doesn't know about our business. It doesn't know about our rules. It doesn't know about our projects and the details and what we're working on and who works on them. We have to provide that context to the AI. And then last, AI tools need to be able to interact with the external world. So we need tools to let them interact. For instance, you'll see tonight that the coding assistant will, through a tool that I've developed, actually interface with Jira for us to get tickets, work on a ticket, move a ticket to another status, close the ticket for us. We can use it to help us create new tickets and things like that. That's just one example of many, many, many that are out there right now. The other point I wanted to make was we're going to move from much of like what we've done in the past is much of an ad hoc kind of process. So if you look at this kind of Jira issue, I'm not sure if you can read this or not. It might be a little fuzzy, but I've got this AI demo 7, integrate OpenAI into a RAG app. I see a lot of this. Like I've been an agile coach. I've mentored on projects, and even after I go in, I teach someone how to write a user story. I still see on the board there's an issue like this. It's got a title, it's got a bullet, and the developer's supposed to know what the heck to do with it. And what we're counting on in those cases, right? And Agile has actually taught us well, because when we're working human to human, human interactions over extensive documentation, all that stuff, it's correct. However, you can't do anything with an AI assistant can't do anything with this, right? There's nothing you can do with it. So you're kind of still stuck at square one if we continue to work this way. But and the reason we've got away from it in the past is because we're counting on the developer who takes it's been in lots of meetings. They've heard a lot of things, right? They've worked on the project for a while. They've seen the source code. They kind of have all the context. No, by the way, I can just kind of slack the team as I go, right? To fill in the details. You can't do that with AI, right? You're going to have to provide more detail. So if you look at the issue on the right here, OpenAI integration, right? That's an example of sort of the level of detail. I'm kind of referring to these, made up my own term, executable specs. So it's basically a user story on steroids. So we're going to need to tell it more than just make sure the app does this. We're going to have to provide more guidance to it. The good news is that AI helps us to do that. The reason we haven't done it in the past is because it's just not worth the effort for us, right? It's a lot of work, and people just hate writing this level of documentation, right? But with AI, it's not a problem whatsoever. So I talked about tools, AI assistants integrating with the real world. So up until a couple of months ago, in order to get Cursor, Aider, these AI coding assistants to interface with external world, say to go to a RAG system, we won't get too, you'll see that in a minute if you're not familiar with retrieval augmented generation. But to go and get new knowledge, right? I would write tools that worked on the command line only. And the reason I did that is because the lowest common denominator for all these coding assistants is ability to run command line tools. But now we have model context protocol. And what that is it's an open standard that Anthropic's developed, excuse me, to let AI coding assistants through a common specification discover new services and then know how to invoke those services to retrieve knowledge, to get context, and also to invoke tools. So what it does is it helps tools like Claude Desktop is integrated, obviously, Anthropic's tool, of course, they would be the first to integrate it. And Cursor has recently integrated it. Windsurf, if you're familiar with that, has recently integrated. It did not work very well the first time that I tried it, but these are early days for it. But the beauty is that we're going to have a specification now, and people are starting to build tools. I've built some, the community's built some, that are going to make these coding assistants and these other AI tools a lot more capable. So it enhances the assistant's ability to provide more accurate and useful responses. You may be familiar if you used with the term hallucination. If you've been using AI tools, you've definitely experienced it where you say, hey, I want to develop this new application with the latest version of LangChain, 0.3.2 or whatever. Instead of saying, hey, I don't know that, because it wasn't trained on that. It was trained on a very old version of LangChain. It'll just happily go and use it, the oldest version of LangChain. It won't even tell you, right? So what's going to happen now is the tools are going to get better and better. And they're going to be able to automatically reach out and get the new context that they need a lot more easily. And we're going to reduce the hallucinations and enhance the experience with our AI tools. So like I said, Claude Desktop and Cursor are already using MCP tools, and the demos are going to show some of those tools integrated. All right. So already kind of
just a quick question. Is that a standard across the LLMs across different companies?
Is. Okay. It is, Prakash. Save your questions for the end, please. Mute yourself.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So I kind of covered this already. AI is just not for coding, right? That's what everybody's focused on, but the real power is the end-to-end integration. That's really where we're going to get the juice out of it. So we're going to definitely do demo 1 and 2. I don't know about demo 3. It depends. Demos tend to generative AI is non-deterministic, right? If you've been using tools, like the best laid plans, and then it takes a little bit longer. So don't know. We'll see. But definitely we're going to have one where I'm just going to use Claude Desktop. And what I'm going to do is, I don't know if you've seen it. If you've seen some of my previous YouTube videos where I use a chained prompt workflow kind of approach where I have a vision prompt, I have a requirements generator prompt, and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a little bit like that. What we're going to do is we're going to go from this project idea. It's going to be simple for time's sake, right? It's not going to be an elaborate one. But we're going to have these chain prompts help us go from a vision statement down to some user stories for our first sprint. And then in the second one, we're actually going to take the user stories for this idea, and we're going to go into Cursor, and using MCP, we're going to have it pull each of the issues from Jira for us, help us work them, implement them, and then we're going to have it basically manage the sprint for us. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And demo 3, we'll see. That's one where just yesterday I was like, hey, I'm going to throw this one in the mix. I just created a story that I haven't even really vetted. It would be a wild card. I haven't even looked at it to see what it would do. So you would really see like unplanned live demonstration. So hopefully I can get to it, but we'll see. All right. So here's what we're going to look at now in Claude Desktop. I'm going to give it a very simple project concept, and this is sort of the workflow. I have a prompt that actually describes this workflow. That first you start with flushing out the vision. Now, technically, most people would not call it a vision. Don't get too hung up on that. So it's a very elaborated project concept, detailed project concept. And then we're going to have that drive another prompt that's going to flush out the requirements for us, right? Help us flush out the requirements. And then we're going to have a prompt that gets fed into that helps us select our tech stack and then generate our architecture. And then last to lay out a set of sprint stories to scaffold our project. So a sprint 0, sprint 1 kind of a setup here. So we're going to have all of that. Let's see. I'm going to get out of here. Oh, I guess I can do this actually. So in Claude Desktop, what I've done is I've set up a project. And in this project here, I have this. Well, let's start. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the one I'm going to share with you afterwards. Okay, so in this Claude project, what I have is I have this document that just defines a very simple project concept. Again, for demo in the real world, it would be much more elaborate than this. But what we're going to say is we just want to generate a Python app that allows users to ask questions, retrieves relevant data from our knowledge store, and then works with the LLM to answer the user's question. And what that's going to kind of look at to make it like a little more clear. So we're going to provide a UI for the user to provide a question. We're going to then use a RAG tool that I've developed that basically I've loaded some content into the knowledge store, semantic search for documents that match that are relevant to the user's query. If we find data from the RAG store, we're going to then integrate it with the user's query, and we're going to feed that to the 4.0 mini OpenAI model to get a response. If there's nothing in the RAG knowledge store, because we haven't ingested it into there, it's just going to come back and say, sorry, I can't answer that question, and bypass all of that. Okay, so now back to this. So we have our project concept. It's pretty simple. And then what I have here is there's a series of prompts, a vision statement prompt that basically will invoke, and it will guide us through generating a vision from that problem statement. Elaborated project concept, let's call it. And then there's another prompt that helps us generate requirements, another one that helps us generate the tech stack, architecture, and then scaffolding our user stories. And to guide all of that, there's a prompt that actually is the workflow prompt that tells Claude exactly what to do when we ask it to help us to initiate a new project, and then which prompts to invoke in this prompt chain, in this workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, and it's going to know because it's in the context of this project exactly what I'm asking it. Help me initiate the project for my concept. So it starts up a chat session. Remember, it has in its context all of those prompts in that workflow chain description prompt as well. So it first starts out like this. I'm going to help you go through the project scaffolding workflow chain. And it's going to start with the phase for generating the vision statement. It says, once you provide these details, actually, I didn't recognize it. You have those details. You have the project concept. Okay. Let me go back here again. I didn't do something correct. I apologize. Should be using Sonnet. Help me create a project concept for the Python. Streamlit that. And of course, I did this 20 times, and it worked perfectly. Failed to fetch. Ooh, this could be a Claude problem. Okay, whoo, okay. You know, the rules of the demo. Says, I'll help you work through the project workflow scan. It's still not recognizing my project concept for some reason.
Sorry to interrupt, Tim. I've done follow the workflow a couple of times, and I've used it in the project instructions. I don't know if you've tried that also. That was successful for me in the past.
I don't know, but see, this was a session I just had a little while ago with it, where basically I said the same thing. Help me initiate the project for the concept. It found the concept. It follows the workflow beautifully. It even reads in the commands from it, right? And then it starts generating the requirements. And then we go down to the tech stack, and then through the architecture documentation. And then finally generating the scaffolding sprint stories. And it's exactly the same prompt. And like I said, I have done this many, many times. All right. Maybe I should be, yeah, you can't really do that. So let me try this again. Maybe I'll try haiku this time. Usually Sonnet works a little bit better. Okay. Can't explain that. Something might be going on with Sonnet based on the project concept. It'll help you generate a vision statement. This is what it's supposed to be doing. All right. So based on the project scope, interactive, intelligent question answering application. So it did read our project concept. Target users, research. I'll show you now. I created a short version of each one of these prompts to speed things up. I'll show you in just a minute. There are much more robust prompts for this because obviously you're going to want to, as you're iterating on your vision or your project concept, you're going to want to look at it, review it, make changes to it, and then move on to the next step. I'll show you that in a minute, but that would take a lot longer. All right, so it's generated a vision statement for us. Based on the prompt that I give it, I always ask it to include this kind of markdown in that prompt. So it's following those instructions and ask me would I like to approve this vision. For time's sake, I'm just going to say approve it. Again, real world, we wouldn't just go approve it because it's guessing for us. Now we'll move on to phase 2. That's the next prompt, is now taking that vision statement and starting to elaborate on the requirements management phase. So it's going to propose some requirements based on our vision statement. And then it's going to say, do you want to review it or do you want to approve it? Again, for time's sake, because we're running a little bit behind, I'm just going to say approve it, because I'm really just trying to illustrate the concept. Obviously, this is not something that we're going to need to get just perfectly. All right, so now we have our technology stack that's aligning. We did say we wanted to use Python and Streamlit, but we didn't say which versions and things like that. And it's basically saying, yeah, front end Streamlit, OpenAI 1.1.2, which will change with our requirements later on. I'm going to upgrade it to a more recent version. LangChain for data retrieval and so forth. All right, I've also prepared requirements.txt, so we could actually get the requirements for the Python app as well. I'm just going to say, I'm going to approve the tech stack. All right, now it's moving on to the architecture definition, using the requirements and the tech stack to help define an architecture for us, including like the domain layers, application layers, the cross-cutting concerns like handling errors, logging, and things like that. I'm just going to go ahead and say approve again. And the last thing would be it's going to propose a set of user stories that fit the tech stack and the requirements for us. So it's come up with a project initialization user story. And if you notice, like it does from a structure perspective, this is all prompt driven. The reason that it's outputting the format and the sections and asking the questions it's asking is because the prompts that are using the chain are directing it to do this. So you can, except for, of course, if you're doing a demo, you can count on it giving you a, a reliable structure every time, right? Which is hard for us humans to do, and it tires us out, basically, right? So what I'm going to do here is, you can see there's a set of user stories for the first sprint, and I'm going to just go ahead and ask it to. Remember, I mentioned MCP. So there's a little tool icon. I don't know if you can see. It's probably hard to see on the start background, called MCP tools that are available. And if you click that, there's a list of MCP tools, MCP endpoints that I've configured Claude Desktop with. Some are mine and some are third-party MCP tools. So in this list, you'll see things like endpoints that can add issues to GitHub, to your GitHub projects, interface with SQLite, create directory so you can interface with your directory, which you normally can't do with these chatbots at all, right? Create directory, search directories, go edit documents and things like that. And then there are a couple in here that are mine. This one here, Conduit is mine for getting compliments pages, creating Jira issues, getting Jira issues, managing Jira sprints and things like that. So it can actually take advantage of all of these tools. So it's the job of the AI assistant to know when to reach out to some of these tools. So what I'm going to ask it to do here is create a Jira issue for the story one project initialization user story you created in my AI demo project. So I've got a Jira project called AI demo that I'm using for this. And it knows how to use the MCP tool. And it's going to come up and ask me if it can use it. Very important. This is a security feature. Most of the tools that use MCP tooling for security reasons will ask you before they can actually execute them. So I'm going to say, allow that for this chat. And it's going to call my Conduit tool here. And it says, I created the issue. So to confirm that, I'm going to go over to the Jira project, to the backlog. And you can see that it actually went to Jira and used the content and created the issue for us. So that's just an example, so this is all concept stuff, right? It's this is stuff that you can imagine that you can work with when you really have a great workflow and you have the right MCP tools that are reliable to reach out and do the things for you, because it knew what to do. It knew which tool to call because I asked it to create a Jira issue. It knew which project to put it in. Well, I had to tell it what project to put it in, but you kind of get the idea, I hope. All right, so that's it. This, like I said, this is going through here very quickly. Now, I just wanted to share with you real fast. I created this other project where it's the same project scaffolding workflow change. So it's the same prompt that basically says, we always follow this process. We ideate on the vision. We ideate on the requirements, and then the tech stack and the architecture and the user stories and things like that. And one feeds into the other. That's the same one. But for this one, this vision statement, I put in my full, it was one I used from YouTube for the folks who watched the YouTube video. It's one I used for one of those. And this one's much more full-fledged. Instead of going through it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one. Let me go back, actually, because I wanted to let you see what the problem I was working on. Let's go here. All right. So what I did for a problem statement, this was the project concept I gave it, right? This is what I came up with. Serverless AI powered DevOps assistant, since it's a serverless group. So the project idea is a fully serverless AI-driven DevOps assistant that integrates with MCP-enabled tools, some of these tools that I was just talking about, provide real-time guidance, automation, troubleshooting, and I provide just a little bit. So I give it an idea here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to show you. I created a session where I said, same thing before, help me to initiate a project for the concept. And it kicks off the workflow. And it starts off with generating a vision. And in this version of the prompts, again, much more robust, it starts asking us, what's the primary purpose of your application? It doesn't just go blast it like the other prompt did. Here it is. You tell me what you want to change. It guides you. So this one is saying, what's the primary purpose of your application? What problem does it aim to solve? You can provide the input. If you don't know, if you don't understand what I'm asking for, would you like to see an example? And you can say 1, 2. And then I just said, just go ahead and proceed with what you've come up with for that one. And I do apologize. I seem to be struggling with this. This is the one that I'm wanting to show you. So this one is the one that worked after I added the right vision prompt to it. It generated the vision and it asked me the same thing here. Just it chooses a different format. Sometimes you can either provide the input, see an example. Here I said, go ahead and see an example. I don't know what you're asking for. So it puts out an example for a to-do at. This is the kind of thing I'm asking you for. And then I just go ahead and say, you go ahead and suggest the purpose statement for me. And then after that, it says, say, use the purpose statement. And then it goes on to the next step in the prompt, which is defining the target audience. Same thing. It says you can provide the input. If you don't understand what I'm asking for, I'll show you an example. So instead, I said, hey, here's my target audience, DevOps cloud engineers. And it said, great. Okay, so here is my new definition for your target audience based on your answer. Do you want to use this or you want to modify? So you can keep iterating with the prompt until you're happy with your target audience definition. You can keep iterating here. And then I said, just use the one that I gave you before, and it'll move on to the core value analysis, where it's asking you what core value are you providing to your market and things like that. And then you iterate on that. And then you go on through the key features and down through to the future vision. How do you see it evolving in the future to solve more problems? And then finally, you end up with this vision statement. That's the culmination of all of that the assistant puts together for you. So the purpose, the target users, the value prop, and things like that. And I could actually now, because it has an MCP tool embedded in it, I could say, save this to a project somewhere on my local directory. Or I could say, hey, go get a list of Confluence pages in my Confluence space. Let me decide where I want to put it. Okay, create this page as a Confluence page under this parent in my Confluence space XYZ. So yeah, sorry for the missteps there. But anyway, I hope you get the idea. Is that the idea is that there are workflows, right? These tasks don't live in isolation. And we can chain these prompts, and we can, within each prompt and within a workflow, we can have it guide us and iterate on different parts of the activity that we're doing. And then different activities can feed other activities, and different prompts can feed other prompts to form a workflow. And then within that, all of these tools and these prompts can now interface with the outside world through these MCP tools. Okay, so that is that for the Claude demo. Okay, there we go. All right, so that was that one. So the next one is, I went ahead and set up a Jira board with 5 user story sprints, but for that same initial project, which was the application that lets the user ask a question. We search our knowledge store. If we get back information, then we interface with AI to answer the user's query. So I went ahead and set up a board with some issues, some user stories. Call them actually, I call them executable specs because they go beyond user stories. But a board, and what we're going to do is we're going to then go into Cursor, one of the AI coding assistants that I use, and it's going to then interface with Jira to pull tickets, to help us work the tickets, close the tickets, and things like that. So that's what we're going to be doing here. All right, so this is the Jira board, and I have a set of 5 stories. So this is what these stories, this is the level of detail these stories have. So when I create stories, I no longer write stories myself. Instead, I use AI to help me define the stories so that they get into a great format that later on AI can consume, right? So it makes, I mean, who better to write the content that's going to drive the content or the implementation, right, than the one that's going to have to implement it. So that's the idea here. So you'll see there's a lot more detail. There's not just like in a lot of projects, hey, just do the basic setup of the project XYZ. The developer will figure out what to do later on. No, that's not going to cut it anymore. So we're going to have things like a description of what we're trying to do, acceptance criteria, so that the AI coding tool can know when to stop, right? That's really important, not just because if you don't, it's just going to probably keep going. I think we should add this, and I think we should add that, and it'll get wrapped around the axle, and you'll have a mess. So you need to have this kind of level of detail. By the way, I also have instructions on my coding assistant that are global instructions that tell it never make stuff up. And also, when you're working issues don't go beyond the scope of the issues unless the user tells you to. So that's combining kind of context instructions to the assistant and then the real-time context of what you're trying to work on. If I have time, I'll show you that as well. But you can see there's acceptance criteria here that it has to meet. And then there's a little technical guidance. I mean, why not? If the AI can come up with knowing what your requirements, your tech stack are, what you're trying to accomplish, right, and your acceptance criteria, why not go ahead and have it say, oh, here's some hints for when we get around to implementing the story so that we can, do the best job possible. So I have 5 of these stories, pretty much all building up this application, first scaffolding it, then adding in the call to my RAG retriever, the knowledge store, and then finally integrating it with OpenAI to answer the user's query. And then we're going to actually put a little bit of more polish on top of the UI. That's a separate story as well. All right. So I'm going to go into Cursor. I have this empty project for the app. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to start it off by saying, go ahead and get all the JIRA issues for the AI demo sprint 1, which was a sprint that we have planned in the AI demo project. So remember MCP tools. So first of all, it's going to go and call the MCP tool to say, hey, what JIRA configurations do I know about, right? Which JIRA sites, because you could have multiple, right? I can have mine. I work with some folks who have their own. So what it's going to do, and this is a red herring here, it's not a problem. This is a new integration for Cursor, so they're still working out some kinks. But what it's going to do is it's going to query and say, call the tool and say, give me, for the project AI demo, give me all the issues in AI demo sprint 1. I'll say accept. Remember, it always asks you before it executes external tools. So it gets that back, it extracts it all, and it lists out all of the different issues we had on that board. It summarizes them, tells us what the status is. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it, which issue should we do first? Which issues first? So it's going to look through the issues and it's going to determine correctly that AI demo 1 should be first. It's a scaffolding sprint. Obviously, from a technical dependency, you can't integrate things that haven't been even stood up yet. So I'm going to say this makes it clear that starting form of sprint. Okay, start with, I'm going to first say lahaha. Move. I'm going to say move the first issue to in progress and start implementing. Okay, so it's going to move AI demo 1 to in progress by making a call to the MCP tool. And if we go back over to our JIRA board and refresh it, we're going to see that issue is now in progress. All right, now it's going to start implementing. It's going to start by standing up our basic requirements file for our dependencies. It's going to set up all that we're trying to do in this first story is just get the user interface, our requirements, some of our project structure in place, and be able to basically, hello world, hello, I'm going to be this RAG retriever app. It's creating a README file for us. And I'm going to do what I'm not going to do what I normally do because I always review the code and understand it. Oh, by the way, and another thing is that if you are implementing, and I know this might be for some of the folks who said, hey, I'm looking for work, and maybe you've been working in a technology that you're struggling with. One of the things in the future is once you master AI integration, because you have experience as a software engineer in various programming languages, this kind of approach in the future is going to let you shift between different languages and different technologies very easy, opening up the door, I think, for a lot of folks, right? Allowing you to move quickly to another technology. Because I can ask it now, explain all of this stuff to me. I've never even developed a Python app in my life, right? I can stop it right here. But instead, I'm going to go ahead and let it do all of its stuff. It's created the scaffolding and our requirements. And now it wants to go ahead and set up a Python virtual environment, isolate all our dependencies, activate that environment, and then install our requirements, our initial set of requirements here. And I'm going to say accept, go ahead and do that. Okay, next command. If I look at my terminal here, it's created a virtual environment directory. I'm just going to go ahead and source it in case I want to run something in the terminal myself. Now it wants to go ahead and test out the Streamlit app. And I'm going to say accept. Launch the Streamlit app. And this is our first, it's not doing anything at the moment. And I'm going to use this question throughout. I want to know how do I write Python code to create a chat app that uses the OpenAI GPT-4o model like this application will. So it left out an import. So what I do, there's various ways to do this. I like to take a screenshot. Take a screenshot, come back down to the coding assistant, paste, and I just say fix. It'll know, no matter what I say, pretty much, it'll know what to do. Fix, error, this, here, hi. It'll know, oh, I see an error here. So just what I suspected, it missed an import. Of course, you've got to import a Streamlit package if you're going to run a Streamlit app. So it's going to, I'm going to accept the update, and then I'm going to let it run the app again. To ask it the same question. Now, I don't expect it to do anything yet because this question processing will be implemented in a future task. It's not part of this issue. Just getting here satisfies this issue. But to be sure, I'll just ask it, are we done with the issue? So it'll probably go and list all the acceptance criteria from the issue. Check, 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 check. And it says, yes, all of these checked off. And now it says, do you want me to move this to done using the MCP tool? I'll say, yep, let's go and do it. And confirm that. We can see our issue's been moved to done. If you don't mind monitoring the time for me a little bit, Daniel, just let me know if I need to like cut this and go on something else or something. So now this issue's been moved to done. Would you like to start working the next issue? Sure. Next logical issue, it says AI demo 2. That is correct. It's going to go and fetch that again. You get the full body. All right, we're moving on to it, and it's going to offer to move that to in progress. So it remembers that I want it to be, from the first time I said, move the first one to in progress. Oh, I know what to do from here. So now it's going to go ahead and move that one to in progress. I won't go back to the board. It's working. First, let's create a new module. So one of the things that a lot of folks do to make things work quickly is just give a prompt, say, create an app that does this. And a lot of times, most of the time, AI tools are just going to take the easy way out, and they're going to say, for this application, they would probably just create an app.py file in the root directory, and they would stuff all the user interface stuff in there, stuff all the OpenAI stuff, the RAG retriever, it'd all be one glob, right? But when I create user stories, the scaffold project, I include in there, hey, make sure this follows somewhat of modular architecture, right? I let it kind of have some liberty to come up with it, but it knows what patterns are. And kind of do that, because a lot of times people say, yeah, it generates crap code. Well, it's because we're giving it crap, usually. It means you're not giving it guidance, right? It's like, just make it work. Well, it's like, I'm going to take the easy way, right? So anyway, so it made all the changes, and now this time it went right down through the acceptance criteria for that ticket, and it believes that we're done. I'm going ahead and accept its changes. We can see all the changes. We could reject individual ones if we wanted to. But I'm just going to accept all. Keep moving. But first I want to go and I want to check the app, because this ticket, refresh that, should have been about integrating our RAG tool. So now it should be invoking the RAG tool to go query our knowledge base to see what documents might match the user's query. Not calling the LLM yet, but it should actually show us. some documents from our knowledge base at this point. Same question from before, retrieving the context from our RAG retriever. And then you can see these are all the documents, and the documents come back with relevance scores, which it's not printing out here. I guess I didn't ask it to actually do that. So this is just the individual document chunks that it retrieved that are relevant to this query. All right. So it says it's all done. It's saying, would you like me to move that one to done? And I'll say yes. Call the MCP tool, move that to done. Says we moved it to done. Would you like to start working on the next one? And it's identified ticket 3, and that is correct. Yes. So we're just in kind of this cycle right now at this point. It knows which ones to implement. It knows acceptance criteria. It knows when it's done. It knows how to move them around. That's important, right? When you're on a team, especially, like, you want people looking at the board to know you're working on something. So this is pretty important. All right, so it's going to go fetch the third ticket. So this ticket is really not about integrating and calling the LLM yet. This is now a scaffolding for just the OpenAI code. So it's going to kind of stub out some of that stuff to get ready for the next ticket, which is going to be the full integration with the Q&A. Okay. It's updating our requirements to add in OpenAI requirements, and it's using the one that I specified in the story. Okay. And it's updating our README file. And now it's going to go and install our new requirements, our new dependencies for OpenAI. Accept. It already did that, so it recognized it already did that, I guess. Yeah, that's right. Read the file. You already did that. All right. So now this is very common with anything. If you haven't developed applications that use APIs, typically you get a .env file. Very common paradigm. Now I'm gonna go off screen here and add my own. I'm going to create a .env file because this is just a template for it. And I'm going to put my own, after I accept this changes, put my own API key in here. And I don't even think this is right though. 4.0, I'm just going to manually fix that to use the 4.0 mini model. It's the one that I wanted. All right, just give me 1 second. We're going to need an OpenAI API key. Okay, so I created a .env file. I won't open it, but that's the one that's going to be read by the application to get the key. All right, so now it's going to go and start setting up the directories and the structure for the OpenAI stuff. For the OpenAI stuff, the OpenAI code. You see you're reading in the OpenAI key. And here it's not implementing the call yet, but it's going ahead and setting us up by instantiating an OpenAI API object and reading in the OpenAI API key. So it's still continuing to create our modules for us. Documenting the code as it goes. Making more changes to the OpenAI client. Updating our README file. Okay, I'm going to accept the changes. It's actually going to delete an old client .py file that it doesn't use anymore. Asked me for permission to delete it. That's what I was waiting on. All right, so now we have all the necessary components in place for OpenAI integration. I always like to go back and make sure that it didn't break anything, even though it didn't really add anything new. Refresh the page, submit. All right, so it's still working, but it's not calling OpenAI yet because it's not part of that story. Okay, so I happen to know for this next story, when it goes to implement OpenAI, that OpenAI APIs have changed since Claude's Anthropic 3.5 Sonnet model was trained, and we're using a newer version of OpenAI, their APIs. So I have ahead of time in the RAG retriever, I've ingested the OpenAI Python documentation into our knowledge store. So what I'm going to do is say, because it's ready now to go grab the next issue, but first I want to say, are we done? Just to make sure with acceptance criteria. It's rechecking the acceptance criteria for us. And check, check, check. Okay, so it's checking them all off. No, I'm going to reject that because I actually do want the mini model. May have put the wrong thing in my issue. Anyway, I'm going to say in this case, NV template. No, I'm just going to reject that one. And then I'm going to accept the other changes to implement the OpenAI client correctly. All right, so now we've completed everything it says for the AI Demo 3 ticket, and it goes back through the acceptance criteria again, says we're all good. And I'm going to say, no, move on, but first, I want you to use the vector store, which is our RAG retriever query tool, to search for relevant information to use to help with OpenAI API integration. Okay, so now it's going to actually use the MCP endpoint for the RAG retriever. The same RAG retriever that we're having the app we're building use the command line to retrieve knowledge for us. So it gets a little bit kind of confusing, but it's the same exact same tool. So here it's going to query that, and it's going to say, hey, what do you know about OpenAI API integration best practices configuration? I'm going to say accept. So it's gathering some knowledge because it may have changed, and it has changed. And it says, okay, yep, we're using the latest API library, .env, only potential improvement. I'm going to say move on to the next ticket. I just want to make sure it had what it needed to the next issue. So it's going to get the issues again. Next issue is demo 4. That's correct. It's going to change it to in progress. All right, so it's looking at acceptance criteria. We've already implemented some parts of it. It believes it probably got ahead just a little bit. And now it's got to make some additional changes. So it's going to need to actually call and handle response from the OpenAI APIs. It believes that we are done. I'm going to stop it because I want to test it. Okay, we're going to submit the query again. Retrieving the context, generating the response, error generating response. Many does not exist. Okay, so I'm going to paste the error in. I wonder if it's not reading. So it is hell-bent on using GPT-4o. But stop. So I think what may be happening is not reading in. I don't think you're reading the key from my .env. Unless I made a typo. I see the issue. So load.env is used to load the variables from the .env file. It forgot to actually insert that function call in there. Now it should properly load. Let's try it again. I'm going to take another screenshot, maybe. You start and stop the app. Sometimes with the Streamlit app, you have to restart it. Oh, lost my keyboard. Keyboard issue. Try that again. Sorry, folks. My keyboard is acting up. No, this thing. Technical difficulties. Sorry. It is just not finding it. Just 1 second. I may have to grab my wired keyboard.
Okay.
Isn't it crazy? Demo's like, I never have issues with my keyboard. And it is now like, no, I'm not. Oh, there it came. I forgot how much I love demos.
You're a brave man to do this. Really, like it happens
AI
every...
too, man.
Yeah.
Okay, still got this issue. So model AF feature doesn't exist. I still get this. I may have to look at the code myself. Again. Error still.
There is a suggestion in the chat model
Error
name should be GPT. Mine is 4 minus many.
Go to the vector store again. The vector store again and look for how to use 4.0-mini with Open AI API. All right, so we're going to try to get it to go back to the knowledge store again. Wonderful. 4.0-mini model configuration usage. All right, let's see if it gets anything useful back here. Let's see. Search results. These are search results coming back from the RAG retriever, by the way. So it is getting some code that looks relevant. And it's got GPT-4. Another page with more. It's got GPT-4 1106 comes back. Somewhere in here, hopefully, there's something about 4.0 mini. because remember the LLMs didn't know anything about 4.0 mini because it came out after Claude, right after Claude came out. 4.0. There we go. 4.0, and I think 4.0 mini is going to be in there. There it is. Let's see how. I feel kind of silly. It's GPT 4.0 mini. So I was blaming Cursor, and it was user error. GPT 4.0 mini, not 4.0 mini. Okay. I'm just going to say reject. My bad. Say, my bad. I fixed the model name. Model name. All right, just want to make sure that it knows so it doesn't keep trying to fix it. Yes, I'm going to try testing it again. Okay. Back to that again. All right. Again, retrieving context. Error generating response. I'm going to restart. Oh, it's still reading 4.0 mini. I'm going to make sure it's not reading this file. I have to restart the Streamlit app, apparently. It's going to run it again. I think maybe you have to restart with Streamlit to get it to reread the environment variables. You can refresh for the UI elements. All right, that's better. Sorry, guys. That was 10 minutes of me typo. Anyway, so we can see now what's happening is it's taking user query, right? Taking the user query, calling RAG to see if it has any knowledge on it. We know it does because you had Cursor use the same knowledge to implement the integration with the OpenAI APIs. And it found the data, integrated the data with that it found into the user's query, and then called the GPT 4.0 mini model to get an answer and display the response. Okay, so that's the functionality. Okay, working. Now, next, let's ask it what it thinks we need to do next. We finish with this ticket. So now it says 4.0 is done, and it's going to move it to done. And there's only one last thing. There's one more issue. And this issue really is a cosmetic thing. It's really about, we go back over here. We'll see all of them are in the done column. This one is about adding some enhancements to the user interface for aesthetics. So let's just go ahead and see. Well, we won't spend too much time on this, but I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead and move that to in progress. Right, and this is pretty typical with the Streamlit app. It'll create some of the styles that it stores into the Streamlit config.toml. And it'll also add some styling probably into the main app as well, components here. So it'll add some more styles here in certain places in the user interface. And it tells us what it did, added a robot icon for the header, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me, I'm going to accept all those changes. Now for the user interface, I should be able to just go back and refresh for those changes. Okay, so it's changed some of these icons. Let's go ahead and run again and see what kind of other styling. Sometimes it really comes up with some elaborate styling. And then sometimes it's just kind of plain, but you can iterate on it. You can say, nah, let's try some more, try some different colors and things like that. You can do that, but that's okay. We're not really trying to make a pretty user interface. All right, so I'm going to say, good. We done? So everything's working, right? And from here, of course, like normally, I'm also going to be writing unit tests. So as it writes these different modules and components, I'm going to say, hey, let's write a unit test. As we get more pulled together, I'm going to say, let's write an integration test for this part, this flow, and things like that. And it usually does a really good job, especially if you point it at specific functions or specific classes and things like that. It does a really good job. And then you can say add test coverage. So it's now going to say, yeah, we're done, and it's going to complete the sprint. So now all of our stories are in the done column. So we're done with that sprint. So other than the user errors there, I think it did pretty well. It had one legit, I think there was one legit problem, and the rest of it was I forgot the GPT dash at the front of the model name. So that was pretty much user error there. Just for grins, I want to see real quick on this one. I don't know that we're going to have time to do. We won't have time to do that ad hoc one anyway. One of the things I did want to share with you real quick, I think this is important, is these AI coding assistants, all of them, especially Aider. Aider has very extensive mechanisms for doing this kind of stuff, loading context and instructions in ahead of time to guide. And what I do is in my coding assistants, I always have this zero hallucination, call it protocol, whatever. Basically, this set of instructions to try to get it to not hallucinate, not make up things. So if I were to ask for OpenAI version 1.62, whatever it was, it should tell me, I don't know, you need to provide me some information. And if you don't do that, at least in the current state, they're getting a little better. But in the current state, it'll go, well, I know this old version of OpenAI. I'll just use that one and tell them that we're good, right? And then you're like, what's going on here? It's this other dependency doesn't work. They're not compatible. And it's like, so you want this kind of thing, right? It's not that long either. Then I have some other commands in here that tell it how I like to deal with commands. Sometimes you have commands that need to be run in certain directories. Some AI coding assistants get confused because they'll, like Aider will run a command and it forgets the command. It doesn't stay in the directory. Then it'll run another command that's supposed to be in a directory and you're in the wrong directory. So I have rules that tell it how to behave in that. I want you to basically chain those kind of commands together. And then I have some instructions here that tell it, and we're going to see how well this works. It won't take but a minute or two. I basically have multiple GitHub accounts, right? I have a personal one, a business one, a couple of other ones. And I use, if you're familiar with Git, you can have a config file for your SSH keys, your private keys. And you can have a config file that says, hey, for this alias, I want you to use this key. And for this alias, I want you to use that key. And so what I'm telling it here is in my config file, I have one called, for coding the future account, I have CTF. So when I ask you to do any Git operations, I want you to use this account. And then I point it to where I want it to, the GitHub account itself, where I want it to create any repos or whatever. So the point is that I can provide, the point is not just this, it's like you can provide these instructions that are global to kind of guide your coding assistants and how you want them to behave in common situations, right? So you're not always prompting, because you wouldn't want to have to say this every single time if you were doing this a lot. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, commit all changes. Let's just do that one first. Commit all the changes. So one of the great things about AI is it's going to check the status to see what it actually needs. There's no, oh, it hasn't, we haven't even initialized the Git repo. So another little cursor thing, it'll be fine though. So it's going to get init, it's going to then add all of our files, because we haven't all of our files are untracked, right? If we come down here and we say git status, you'll see. Git status. Yeah, because it hasn't been git initted yet, so there is no git. So it's going to get init, then it's going to add all our files, commit it with a nice little commit message, right? Ray power assist, All right, so now if I do the git status again, you're going to see it has been initialized, but everything's going to be committed. And notice now that we initialized it, it's like, oh, well, you need to get ignore, because you don't want to be checking in some of these files, like your .env file with your API key in it, right? So it recognized that. I'd totally forgotten. And then it's going to do a little bit of a cleanup for us here. And there's one more thing I'm going to get it to try to do once it's cleaned this up. At our files, it made a couple more changes. All right. All right, so now it's been initialized, I'm going to say, hey, create this repo in my remote GitHub hub account. Let's see how well it does this. All right, using the GitHub, like I told it here, I have the GitHub client installed, so it knows to use the GitHub client to create the repo, give it a description. Now it's going to push it. Push it. It should come back and ask me for my password for my key store. Oh, let's see. 515 GitHub's Mac. There's a file here somewhere. Oh, it didn't probably add it to the git ignore. Remove cache. Commit. Okay, there was what it is. GitHub has a maximum file size, and there was some file that got created in here that exceeded the file size. Okay, now clone the repository. Let's see if it really did that. I'm going to go. I guess I have to keep doing this over and over. I'm going to go to my Coding of the Future account and go to repositories. And sure enough, it did create the Streamlit RAG client app and pushed all of the code, the README file and everything. All right, so that's enough. I think you get the idea. It's doing all of this stuff between instructions, global instructions that I provided, anti-hallucination, use some tools, GitHub client, here's the name of the account that I want you to use, and so forth. It's using MCP tools, right, to interface with the RAG tool that I created to get knowledge about new technologies. It's using the other MCP tool, Conduit, it's called. These are all projects that are in the Coding the Future GitHub account, by the way, too, to actually interface with Jira to manage our Jira issues. Okay, so good there. I think I'm looking at the time here, Daniel. I think that's probably got to be a wrap unless you say otherwise for
No,
Q&A,
no, that's
right?
fine. We
All
can
right.
stay longer, like keep going if there is more you want to share.
Okay, well, if the only other thing I was going to do, I just don't know how long this would take. This will be like a Wild West. Let's see what the heck happens real quick, right? All right, so the RAG retriever is actually, I may have it open somewhere. RAG retriever. So that's this MCP tool that we've been interfacing with, and this app is actually using as well to get knowledge. This is the repo for it. So I'm going to close some of these. I got a lot of files open here. You guys are seeing my cursor IDE, right? Yes.
Yes.
We can see it.
Okay, I want to make sure. So here's what we'll do. We're in the RAG retriever app, or the repo rather. There's a ticket here that I created just yesterday where I want to, right now, the RAG retriever is exposed. It has capabilities to go scrape websites, fetch them, add them to its knowledge store, so that then we can run queries against it. I've exposed it through the command line, but I have not exposed that capability through the MCP endpoints yet. The ones that Cursor Cloud Desktop would have to have exposed in order to make use of the code. So for instance, it might do a web search and say, hey, here's some new URLs. It'd be great if we actually index those for the future, right? For this new version of OpenAI. So now I want you to go RAG retriever, ingest those kind of things. I haven't exposed that via MCP yet. It's only via command line. So what I wanted to do is see how quickly we could have it pull this ticket and see how well it could go ahead and implement this feature for us on the fly. All right, so let me see what I will need the issue number. And this is in a different project. So this is in my normal AI coding tools project. So the issue is ACT 16. I'm going to say, go get JIRA issue, ACT 16 from the ACT JIRA project. So I have provided it with the MCP tool to do this. Obviously, we've been doing this all along. Just going to go and get a key for that. Okay, it's going to summarize for us. It's in to-do status, and it knows what we wanted to do. I know basically which files are going to be affected, at least the main one that's going to be affected here. It's going to be the server. This is the main Python code that exposes all of these different MCP tools to these coding assistants, right? So these are basically functions with decorators that fire up an MCP server to expose this stuff. This is called fast MCP. So this file here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this file in here. And I'm going to say, use the code, the endpoint MCP endpoints already defined. Find in our server. I'll be glad when cursor implements audio input in our server to implement our new issue. All right, let's see what we got. All right, so we're going to implement what scraping endpoint for MCP. It identified the server as the target, so let's take a look at the code. In this case, we'll look at the file because it's in one file. It's pretty easy to see. So you've got these other MCP endpoints for JIRA and not JIRA, for querying and things like that. But now it's actually adding a fetch URL. Right, and it's going to get value. Okay, I already know that I'm going to have to correct this because it's trying to do the scraping itself, which is not correct. What we want to do is delegate to the code that's already knows how to do the scraping, right? So I'm going to reject that. I'm going to say, don't pre-implement the web scraping. Use the app's existing fetch functionality. The same that is used by the -- fetch command line, which is the way that the RAG app we created is actually calling it. Right, so it recognized its error. I rejected your updates. Review the issue and existing fetch functionality. Probably should have said. And just show me a plan. Show me a plan. Do not update code yet. So I do this a lot too. Instead of when there might be a complex feature, something like this, a lot of times I'll say, okay, we got the ticket, show me your plan first. So then I can kind of correct it if I see something obvious like this. Because as soon as I saw it, I knew what it had done. I was like, no, I'm just going to implement it. Didn't look through the project to see that we already had reusable code. Okay, current architecture, client uses process, MCP implementation. Add tool registration, fetch URL. for search util. I'm going to ask it which existing code currently implements the vector store web scraping functions. So I'm going to kind of try to trigger it to go look at the code again, look through the code and try to identify what can be reused. If anything, okay, it found it's looking at the crawling code, which is the correct module. Drag retriever crawling code. There we go. That's what we have. So it uses Playwright. So now let's see what we have. So web scraping, it identified the crawling module is doing that for us already. Vector store. And I'm going to say, now it says, would you like me to proceed with implementing the MCP interface? It uses this. Let's see how well it does. Yes. So while it's doing this, one thing that I do a lot of times when I'm going to create a ticket on existing code base, I get a lot of questions about how do you work with existing code base. This is one, and it probably will work better if I'd done it for this one. Inside of the coding assistant, where it can see the code, would have been an ideal place for me to actually say, help me create a JIRA issue for the code, because then it can help me flush out the acceptance criteria and it can see the code, so it can put technical guidance into the issue, create the issue. That way, when it comes back, it would have known, oh, yeah, I already analyzed this and I know that I have code there already that does this, and et cetera, et cetera. So let's see how it did this time. Processed URL, next up. Well, I'm just going to take a quick look, processed URL. All right, so I'm going to say recheck that the new code uses the web crawler, the existing. I'm just going to drag the whole directory in there, so force it to look at it. So it's examining the different code, including the main that makes the command line calls. And I see the issue in my implementation. The process URL is being used. Okay, our current implementation isn't properly handling this async nature. Well, I didn't even check that one yet. Okay, let's take a look at this one. All right, fetch URL. Processing max depth, async IO. Let me take a look at the crawler. System platform. Well, maybe it is correctly doing it, and that might be my bad. Well, let's test it and see. All right. So one way you can test MCP servers is with an inspector. So I'll launch the inspector with this MCP command. And let's see how it does. All right, connecting to our MCP server. It's a tool, so I'm going to tell it to list the tools. So now I did add, so it does recognize, so at least our decorator and all that stuff is set up. But let's see if it actually fetches something. I'm going to go find, let's find this meetup. I'll just ask it to go try to scrape that and ingest it. And I'm just going to say max depth 0. Otherwise, you can find links, follow links, and it can take quite a while. Starting the crawl of meetup.com serverless events. Error request timed out. All right, one last time. View the implementation. Implementation of the new MCP endpoint. It should use the same existing code as the command lines -- fetch option does. So it's looking at the command line options for the -- fetch to see what it does. See the issue now, looking at the CLI implementation, you see the fetch command first checks max depth, then directly calls process URL. And our MCP implementation is close, but needs to match this pattern more exactly. And then it's going to make some updates. I'm going to accept the updates. Text content. All right. All right, I'm just going to restart the MCP server. Let's see. List tools, fetch URL, 0. Could be not handling this parameter. It could be a type thing. Timing out, huh? All right, I'll show you what it's supposed to be doing real quick, and then we'll probably just I'll call it on this. But what should be doing is this rag retriever. This is via the command line instead. -- fetch. This is what I'm trying to get it to do through MCP. -- max depth 0. So from the command line, this is what it should be doing, crawling that page, stop not going down through any links, and just adding that to the vector store. So I'm just doing this to make sure that it's not a problem with actually processing that web page. Nope, it's actually adding it. Let's say this is a -- fetch command for a site that's not working via the new MCP endpoint. And I'll just hand it that output just to see if it sees anything. Notice from the CLI output, there's detailed progress information. Our current MCP implementation is capturing this output to return to the user. All right, so. Not sure. I mean, it's actually adding error handling, but I don't know that that's really the problem. Start it one more time. It won't hurt to re-ingest it. I don't usually do that, but it's not going to hurt anything. Maybe I wonder if the inspector has a timeout. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna one more time. I'm just gonna try to find something. Here. Let's see what it does with this page, because possibly it's there. Maybe the inspector has a certain timeout that I haven't overridden, because usually the ones I've tested are quick. This one takes a while. It's got to scrape, right? 0, run the tool. I bet that's what's going on. That's what was going on. Okay, so it's working, but the timeouts were because the inspector tool for MCP must have a default timeout. I bet it's got like a 5-second timeout on these endpoints. So there we go. So it does work in the end. And then of course we close the ticket, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, when I did that with the Conduit tool, which was the one Jira and Confluence, and pointed at the Jira REST API, it did a great job of actually looking at the patterns in the current code base and saying, okay, I see the JIRA documentation for that. I see your patterns in your code. And it just, boom, it just put it all together. It updated all the multiple files all together, and it worked the first time. I added 2 endpoints like that, boom, boom. This one's a little more wonky with the playwright implementation, I think. Probably shows me too that the other one might be structured, the project might be structured just a little bit better as well. Anyway, I appreciate your patience on that, but you can see this is kind of the process that we go through. I'm sure it will work better had I created the ticket from here and then said, analyze the code, create the ticket, put in some instructions inside of the ticket for later on, and then pull the ticket. All right, so Daniel, I don't know if you, I guess I did have a.
I'm okay. Like,
Um,
any other slides left? So we managed to go through all 3 demos. Thank you so much for that.
yeah, yeah, that I knew that one was like could go in either way, right? But it's good to actually see. I know that we're not looking at the code and reviewing all the code, and so it's a little bit unrealistic, right? We're not in real development mode. You're not just going to go, okay, test, it works good, close it. You're not going to do that, I hope. But the great thing is that you can use the AI tools to expedite that stuff, right? And then you can use the AI tools to help you in multiple ways. You see me take screenshots. I can provide it logs. I can go say, hey, go look in the RAG store. Oh, I can provide it. Let's go do a web search and now get a URL. Now scrape that, pull that content. Does that help any? So you can do all these kind of things, but that goes back to the integration. It's not the AI capabilities that are the problem. It's integrated, as you can see, right? It's the integration and the workflows and the tools and the context. And it's still not magic, right? There's still going to be hiccups because, again, it's non-deterministic. But I did want to share this real quick thing with you folks. A couple of things, right? So workflow rigor. I know a lot of folks I've talked with think that it's going to be less, like you're just going to go right in your coding assistant and that's all you're going to do is just say, hey, generate some code, generate some tests, generate some code, generate some tests. I think it's going to be the opposite. I think we're going to have more rigor, more process, more definition, more documentations. But the great thing is the AI is going to be able to help us create and maintain. So we're going to be able to go downstream, and then we're going to be, I can be working a ticket inside my coding system and go, oh, I know that there was an acceptance criteria that wasn't stated in here. I don't have to sweat it too much. I can just say, hey, go update the ticket and add that in there. So you have that traceability now too. And then if someone actually uses that documentation to do something later on, it's accurate, right? So in tools where you're trying to automate, it's accuracy and completeness is important. For humans, not as much, right? Because we can ask, we can sit and think, we can go out and research, we can Slack people and stuff like that. And I think what's going to happen, I think this is one of the things, Daniel, I remember you kind of hinting at, I think the AI is going to lead to more ability to be more generalists than specialists, because you can see, like, once you master, if you have a solid overall understanding of the engineering process and all the roles, like I'm not a DevOps engineer at all. I work with them. I've done a couple of DevOpsy things and stuff like that, right? But I'm not one. But with the help of AI and all the integration and things like that, I could step into that role, right? Pretty well. If a DevOps person, they have some software engineering chops. They just don't design applications, but they could leveraging AI and workflows and integrated tools. I could see them easily stepping in and developing applications. So and project management and things like that, right? I think it's going to enable us to shift between different roles on our projects, right? And also between different languages and frameworks, technologies, all that kind of stuff, because you can actually use your AI tool as a mentor as you go, right? You don't have to go take necessarily a course just to learn, oh, I just need to understand this library. Just say, here's what I need to know about this library. Teach me right here in place. Now let's update the code. Now tell me how that worked, And then the last thing I'm going to share here, and it is quick. A lot of folks are saying, AI can't generate good code. Well, this project, the one down here, you can see that was the one that we were just making an update to. That was RAG Retriever. It's got about 4,000 lines of code, and it's modular. You can see it's modular. It's modular because when I scaffolded the project, I told the AI, make sure that things are modular, make sure that functions are decomposed into modules, right? so that it just spit everything out into a Python script, and then I was screwed. So I told it that. And then this Conduit project, which is the other MCP tool, it's about 2,500 lines of code, 100% AI generated. You know, now a non-engineer, nah, you're not going to do that. But if you have general engineering experience, you can definitely rock this. And then Aider, which many people have heard of. It's a really popular open source coding assistant. I use it as well a lot. So Paul publishes a chart every time he does a release. He does releases very frequently, like really frequently, right? And he's got this chart that shows how much of each Aider release is written by Aider, him using Aider, but Aider is actually generating the code and he's just guiding it and reviewing it, right? So he's averaging somewhere around 70% for the last few months, right? So Aider is developing Aider. These MCP tools I'm using are helping me develop the MCP tools and extend them. So it's very, very, very meta at this point, right? So people who say that, it's because they haven't really dug in. You got to do the reps too, right? You can't just like go to the presentation. You then got to do it. You build that motor memory and say, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Here's what I do now. Here's how I prompt it now. But it's definitely possible, right? More and more code is going to be generated 100%, 90% by AI really soon. And it's happening now. And a lot of people say, well, it's just generating. They probably had the experience where it generated one big Python script and it's like, that's a mess. And it is, because the human didn't provide the instructions it needed. So, all right.
That's awesome.
So that's probably all I need to say. That's a lot, and I've gone over time. But thank you so much.
Thank you. So I hope people were able to follow, like for those who were just looking at the fireworks of ideas. Maybe can you just recap at the end that that the magic isn't in the code that was generated, it's in the prompts, and share those prompts. Recap like what you showed at the beginning.
Oh, okay. I see, Andrew, you've got your hand up.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Why don't you do that first? You want me to kind of go back through that?
Yes, because it's 10 to 8. Maybe you need to go. Andrew, go fire the question first.
All right. Well, it wasn't so much of a question, but just to shout out to the group. So I actually used Tim's techniques, and I really put them just the other day. I kind of got into the flow of what you saw Tim doing today, and it is really wild. It goes so fast. Like when you think of your ideas and then you just put them into Jira's, and Tim mentioned talking in, he's waiting for audio. So on the MacBook, I hit F5 to speak. And just last night, like I knocked out 3 Jira's just talking to my computer like Star Trek, and following Tim's method, I knocked out 3-4 MCP servers for Google, Gmail, Calendar. I got YouTube done today and another one. That was done in probably 15 minutes. So like this stuff works. And I really think what Tim's teaching here, it's the skills of the future for sure. Easily.
And I think thank you for that. And I think we're just getting started. Like we're just putting the pieces together now. So it's kind of rough. You can see like one of my big things is context switching is a killer, right? Like jumping from tool to tool is just really a killer. So what I'm personally driving through for my own process to reduce that, you see like, okay, it's fine to be in Cloud Desktop or some other tool for the planning. That's great. Stay there, stay there for the planning. But then when you move into your coding assistant, we want the tools to stay there, right? And do our work, not to go, oh, let me check the Jira board. Okay, let me come back over here. Let me go look at the project requirements. Let me come back over here. Oh, let me go check the Confluence site for the tech stack. No, go get my Confluence page. Tell me what my preferred tech stack is supposed to be. That kind of stuff. So we're getting there, and I'm sure many people are already, probably the big tech companies, are already working on a really inclusive suites. I know GitHub, they're going to have their own. They're building more and more because they want you to stay in GitHub, right? So we want to stay in our coding assistants. They want you to stay in their ecosystem. So it's going to get easier and easier and easier, but we still got to be the creators. We still have to be the guiders. There's no substitute for that stuff, right?
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
So did I need to review the workflow thing? I have a diagram. I mean,
I think that's useful for people because they may be overwhelmed. I saw we lost half the audience through the talk because it looked like another coding thing, but it's not. So just tell them where to pay attention. You cover the seeding part in the coding assistance, but the workflow itself, not too many people are part of your community. And so we can continue this once you watch the video recording and kind of go through the homework and be pasted. We'll meet again at Team Zone community to go deeper. But recap for the YouTubers.
Okay, so what we actually did was we showed how that it's all really not just about the coding, right? What we need is we need to integrate AI into our end-to-end workflow. And in order to do that, we can use a system of, there are different ways, but one way is to use a system of workflows. Those workflows are basically descriptions of how we start, how we move through from one point in our process, our engineering process, say project initiation, all the way to the we're ready to execute our first iteration, our first sprint. That can be a workflow, right? Gets us from point A, ideating on the project requirements through the architecture and everything, all the way down there. And we can chain prompts together that work as a sort of a community, if you will, together to help guide us through all of that stuff. When we've done that, what we can do is we can take the same concept of a workflow and move to our coding assistant. Where it changes with our coding assistant is we don't necessarily need as many predefined prompts anymore. I used to have a bunch of predefined prompts that would actually, I would plug into my coding assistant too to say, here's how you do a unit test, here's how you implement. Turns out now with the coding assistants, we didn't talk about this part, sorry. They're becoming more agentic in nature. And so it's not just a shot here, go do something. They will kind of think and behind the scenes kind of have agents that kind of collaborate. So we don't as much need this part once we move into our coding assistant, but what we need there really is the integration of these external tools that allow us to pull in external knowledge, call things in our external environment and things like that. And then for the coding assistant, you also need to be able to provide instructions to your coding assistant on how to behave under certain conditions, like globally, right? So it's a combination of that, this context, which is these global instructions, plus this context-specific stuff that's like, hey, okay, we're working on this API now. We need to get some information on this because I know you don't know about it, or you don't know my business case, you don't know my use cases, my user story, so we need to go get that. Plus having them integrate with these tools to take actions in our environment, like move my user story, create this document for me, right? Notify my team via Slack that I've started working on this, whatever the case may be, those kind of things. So the key really is workflows that contain prompts that are chained to get you from one point in your overall process to another point. Stay within that tool as much as you can. When you move to the next tool, you may need workflows or you may not need workflows, but what you definitely need is the ability to pull in context, interact with your external environment, and instructions for your coding assistant to guide them. So it's, and in summary, if that's the summary, right? That's pretty much what it is. It's like we can actually then come up with DevOps workflows, all those kind of things to drive it. And those kind of things are reusable, but you're keeping the human in the loop. That's the key through all of this. It's not agents are coming, agents aren't going to do all of this stuff. They're going to be plugged in strategically to certain points in the workflow, in my view. Hey, I can delegate to you. I need to go do some market research to help me on whatever project, vision, product ideas that I have. I'll come back in the morning. Fine. Go off and write an entire app for me. No, we're still going to be plugged into the loop, even if an agent's doing it. So these concepts still are going to apply. That's what I'm saying. So we're going to have to provide the context, the inputs, the tools for agents are for our, the workflow kind of approach that I've been showing here.
Amazing. So who wants to go quickly through the Q&A? So we're almost at 8. I know many will have to leave. So just some of the top questions that they came to mind in the chat.
I had a question.
Or anybody wants to speak up, you go ahead.
Yeah. Can I get the URL for the MCP?
Yeah, I'll paste that.
Okay, thank you.
Or Tim, you can do that.
Yeah. In
So
fact,
all URLs will be shared.
Yeah, I was going to say that you can just actually just point at the Coding the Future GitHub repo too, because there's the RAG retriever, there's the Conduit, there's the prompt library, and things like that to show this. That's what I'm pointing at right here is if you go look at that, I would pay attention to the workflows folder. I don't know if I'm still sharing. I don't think I'm still sharing. Oh yeah, I am.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the workflow folder, because I have so many prompts, I should put them in an experimental area to delineate the ones that are not ready for prime time. Sorry, but the ones that you find in that are described in the 3 workflows, those have all been tested. So they're linked. If you look at the workflow description, I've linked the appropriate prompts right inside of this document here. So you just click, so you can know that these have been tested and work.
Okay, and then my other question is, Tim, if I wanted to, I guess also join your group, I saw your website. I could just reach out to you.
For the Skool community, all you need to
Yeah.
do is go to that page and just subscribe.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And you can always find all of the stuff through the YouTube channel. So it's all linked in the description. Company, Skool, all that stuff is linked in my YouTube channel description.
Excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. Jimmy, you go next. And thank you, Jimmy, for answering the questions in the chat.
Yeah, sure. Hey, thanks, Tim, for the wonderful sharing. Just a quick question. I use Cline agent deeply. Just wonder if you tried that and why do you go with cursor instead of the other options?
What was the one that you used?
I shared the link, which is Cline agent.
Let's see.
Cline.
Yeah.
Cline.
Yeah, Cline.
Cline,
We can
Visual
use
Cline.
Cline.
Oh, Cline. Yes, I hear a lot of good things about Cline. I'll be honest with you, I haven't tried Cline, but I hear in the Skool community, I hear a lot of good things about it.
Okay.
I hear that it works really well. This was my take. I bullet down this. I hear that it works really well. It seems to take a more agentic approach, sort of like Cursor. Is that right? Where it's basically not just a one shot. It's kind of like trying to figure things out. Yeah. Somebody said something about, because unlike Cursor and Windsurf, where you pay, well, yeah, you pay one fee, but when you hit your limit, you have to keep increasing it. So I don't know that this is accurate. I think the perception is this, right? Oh, well, Cline eats up my tokens, and because I'm having to pay for the LLM, it's expensive. But Cursor will make you think everything's fine, and all of a sudden it says now you're on slow mode, which is almost unusable. Oh, would you like to spend another $20?
Yeah. So how slow the process can be after 500 fast requests?
Yeah. And so I don't even buy. I just go. I say just stop it. Whatever.
Okay.
To me, it's like, I don't know. And different people have different situations. People ask me on the YouTube channel. It's like, I remember last summer I showed developing an app, and I spent like $1.80 on it, and someone said, "How do I get it to 0?" I'm like, "You don't. You can't. Your time's worth something."
Yes,
You like Cline, huh?
Thank you, Tim.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I was thinking before you came here that you'll be using Aider. It's all the same to me. But why did you choose Cursor?
The reason I choose Cursor, because if it didn't have agentic mode now, I would have gone with Aider hands down. But for a demo where we're moving quickly, and there's more to explain with Aider, right? Aider's more flexible, it's powerful, in ways. The difference with Aider is that it is not developed in an agentic way, and Paul has not yet implemented MCP integration, and he has not answered. I'm sure he's working on it, but he has not come out and committed to. So I can't demonstrate MCP. I can demonstrate the command line RAG retriever and Conduit, and because I have instructions, but I have to prompt it. I have to actually have a bunch of instructions to say, "Hey, you got this tool. Here's the command line syntax for it, and here's when you." With Cursor, I don't have to. I just basically say MCP, point it at it. It discovers all of the endpoints and what they do, and decides when that's reason, really, for Cursor in this case.
Cool. I have problem paying for subscription for the repo Visual Studio Code. So, personally, I'm just using Continue.dev plugin. It's better than regular copilots. But then I was planning on using Aider. I'm not there yet, or clients. So people watching this recording, don't think you have to use Cursor and pay them. There are free options.
No,
that
you
you
don't.
just pay a tokens. Yeah.
But you will be swapping. You're just moving money around,
Yes,
though,
yes,
really.
yes.
And then you're going to have an API subscription for Claude, because I'll just be honest with you. Like, I've stuck with Claude 3.5 Sonnet. It's almost a year old. And as far as just coding, the way that I code, at least the way that I code, it just rocks. And I occasionally I'll try another one. I'm like, oh man, one of the OpenAI models, and I'm like, 4.0, it doesn't even touch it for coding. Not even close.
Yeah.
It just goes all
Same.
over the place.
Same here.
I
So
fully agree with that. But for debugging, like nobody finds bugs like all one. Like you just get tired
wow.
after an hour.
Okay.
Say, what did I do wrong? And then
Okay.
boom.
Good to know. That's why we share this stuff, because so I try not to, like, I try to focus a little bit, like raise my head up and play around, but man, you can really just get sucked into, there's so much going on, right? And you get nothing done because you're just trying everything out. So that's good to know. That's what we need to know. It's like, maybe I should try O1 for that.
So
Yeah,
any other
there was a
questions?
few more questions there. Curtis, did you want to ask your questions?
Yeah, I can I go? Yeah, I can ask question. I have a one. The thing that came to my mind was, as you did the ideation, came up with issues and you put them in Jira, and then it was the entire process of going through each other Jira, developing them, and then committing them and whatnot. What I was curious about, if we go through the same process over a week, or for the whole software system, that's going to take longer, much more longer than 1 hour, for example. Is there a way to have a product roadmap that's up to date, almost either near real time, or at least by each commit or whatever, to be able to see the product being developed over that cycle during the entire software development life cycle, so that maybe on a repo we can see, I did one issue today, I'm going to do another issue tomorrow, maybe today evening the roadmap will be ready, and tomorrow morning I can see the map visually and then continue. So is there like a way to put that kind of workflow in where I can see up-to-date roadmap? And that's the
So if I understand if I understand what you're talking about, it's exactly kind of in line with my point of being able to do this now. So it sounds like what you're looking for is almost like a sort of information radar, where I've got my plan and I want to know where I am at any given time along the road to that plan, right? And if that plan changes, I want also help updating the plan as well. Is that kind of where you're going with this?
yeah, definitely, because
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be the way it's going to be, really. You're going to plan, and then you're going, right now it's kind of a one-way work stream for most projects. It's like somebody plans, product manager says, do this. It's not often really well defined. A lot of conversations go on, gets down to the developer knows to do something different that's in the plan. The plan never reflects what the developer decided downstream, right? And it's been okay, because it's just not worth the effort, and the time, really. We got other things to do. But with AI now, we're just going to be able to build tools that'll say, hey, I know this was the decision. I made this change, update it so that whoever's looking at the plan knows I made the change, right? And here's what I did. And then more so, like what you were talking about, it's like basically the status, right? I've done this, I've done that. And even things like tracking velocity most people don't do that because it's kind of it's such an art, and it takes so much time to actually, in the planning process, say, how fast is the team really going? We'll be able to use AI to do that. This is how fast the team really goes. Here's the real capacity of the team, right? So that when you plan your work, you can get more and more realistic about it. So all of those things, every bit of those things are possible, but we got to build the integrations to do it, right? And then we got to test all the workflows and all the tools and that kind of thing. But the capability is there.
Yeah, anything is possible there around there. I was more focused on the technical product itself, the product that is being developed using the tool and in updates. I think that's me. I think you answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, and still, it's definitely
because-
all possible, right? We just got to do the integrations, really, and put in the work to know how to use this stuff too. Because part of the integration is integrating us. It's not just integrating tools; it's integrating us and our our know-how, our knowledge too. And then you can do all of those kind of things.
So we are over time, so I'll let John continue. He summarized some of the best questions in the chat.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the best questions are. Does anyone want to speak up who had a question? Okay, we got someone with a hand up there. Go ahead.
Hi.
Yeah, I don't know if it has been, I was away for a moment. I don't know if it has been asked, but I want to know if there is, if MCP is something similar to the way to make agents talk to each other, or is it more of a way to program like an API for one space to interact with one specific agent, or is it a way to make 2 or 3 agents interact with each other? That's one. Another is for when you do the RAG training, is there a way to make sure that is there some kind of version control where information is extracted from the latest instead of like a previous version of your project or your Jira story or Confluence page, something like that?
Let me take your first question, then I'm going to ask for clarification on the second one. The first one is MCP was really designed not for agent-agent communication. I'm sure there are protocols out there being developed or have been developed for that and frameworks. MCP was really developed to allow different AI coding assistants or agents, right, to actually interact with the external world. So if they need to call tools for some reason, it's made for that. If they need to actually call on resources that can provide new knowledge, external knowledge to them, it was really made for that. But it really wasn't made as like a agent-agent protocol, if that's what you're asking. The second question, did I answer that question?
Yeah. Just so I am experimenting with only ChatGPT. I haven't tried Cloud AI yet, even though I've been hearing about it. And there is the trade API where you can call tools functions. So is MCP something like that?
I'm not familiar with. I don't think
Okay.
I'm familiar with that one, so I can't really speak to it.
All right.
But it's really not in between. I mean, you could definitely architect an agent system that leverages it. I'm sure there are ways to do that. It's just that that's not the real design center. That's not really the reason that was the reason for being for that tool, right? It really is to connect. It's a connector, right? I've got AI tool, whatever that AI tool is, it needs to interact with the external world. It's got to have context. It's got to make calls to things and make things happen. It's really meant for that. But I could imagine like an agent, you have a team of agents and each one of them use MCP, right? And they would, right? And MCP to do what? To call their own tools, to do their own job for their tasks. Real quick, could you clarify that second question for me, though? I kind of got lost on that one.
Second one. So when I'm experimenting, I find sometimes that it is using the previous version of PDF document that I have uploaded instead. For example, I have a concept, an idea of an app for Q&A like you did. And the first version has certain features. In the latter version, I have changed my idea and updated the concept. But I find sometimes it uses the previous version and I was just struggling. Maybe I have tried to use prompts to make sure that the latest version of the document is used. But whenever you do whenever you provide context and documents for the model, how do you make sure, like, is there a better way of doing that?
Well, let me ask you, how are you providing the documents? Are you in a single session, a single chat session or a coding session, and you've provided a version 1 and then you've updated to a version 2 and you're in the same session?
I was doing that, but recently I found out about trades and how I could have a trade of conversation so that it's aware of that document as long as I stay in that trade.
What
But if
what tool are you using? I mean,
ChatGPT, just
oh.
ChatGPT, and I'm using the API with Next.js.
Okay. And you're finding that in both or just in ChatGPT is what you're talking about?
Just ChatGPT.
And so the threads thing, I have a feeling that that's probably sharing some context between those. I don't really know if it's compressing context. or not. I don't know if maybe someone here knows whether that's the case or not. I know that for long chats, it does do compression, right? That's how you can have such long chats in Chat GPT. Unfortunately, Claude doesn't. Claude Desktop doesn't. They cut you off pretty quick if you have a long session, like you're done. But I don't know about thread to thread. And by thread to thread, you mean chat to chat?
Yeah, it's charts that you can keep a longer context.
Yeah,
You can keep on going on, and
yeah,
then
I'm
you
sorry, I
can keep
don't.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd be imagining it, making it up if I don't think I've used that very much.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so
sorry.
much. Yeah,
Ask
this was
ChatGPT
great.
to research that for you, though.
Okay.
Seriously.
Good answer.
Yeah, of course. Just ask it.
When people
Curtis,
tell me
here's-
on the YouTube and like a YouTube video, it's like, "Hey, you didn't show us how to install these tools on Windows." I'm like, "But I gave you a prompt to ask ChatGPT," you know, that kind of thing. So I think it's just a mental thing. I do the same thing. Like, why am I trying to solve this? Just, you know, so they're getting to that point, especially with the deep research stuff and O1 and O3 and all that stuff. It's like and even I'm finding that more of them are self-aware now too. Before, you know, a few months ago, you'd say, you could even ask it about itself, right? Like a new version of itself, and it didn't have a clue. Now it seems to be more and more up to date. You
Now
know,
it's getting
stuff.
amazing, but at the same time, there is always a doubt in my head how far drilled I am from my objective. Then, like, is it actually taking me in the direction I want, or is it just
Yeah.
But yeah, you're
I don't
right.
know. Sorry, I
Thank
can't
you so
really
much.
answer
I
that
mean,
one,
that's
but I would.
everything was
Mhm.
wonderful. No.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Let's take Curtis. He has lots of questions in the chat as well.
Oh, okay.
And maybe we should wrap up. It's 8:15. John is still at work, I guess. So,
Hi, thank you for the presentation. This is a quick question. I'm sorry if you answered this before. I was wondering what might be the best AI to install locally, and should you like I was told that you couldn't install Claude, but it wasn't that great at, like, if you install it locally, it's not that great. So which one might you install for, like, programming or some needs like that? But or is that a good idea or no?
So two answers. So Claude is closed, it's proprietary. You cannot install it locally. There's no version of it because it's not open source. Second was a year ago, I was really researching. These are the quantized models. So I don't know if you're familiar with quantization. That's how they take some of these larger model variants, right? And they move them from like float 32 or float 16, which takes up a lot of space, and they get basically, you know, okay, to the non-technical description is they downsize them, right, to 8-bit, 4-bit, something like that. But what happens there a lot of times is they're slow running on your machine. Like I have a top of the line MacBook, right, with like, I don't know, 48 cores and 128 gigs of memory and stuff like that. And even some of them, and when you get up to the 32 billion parameters, 36, they're kind of slow, but they still they're not as accurate either, not even close as accurate as Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I mean, it's not even close for coding. So I'm very interested in that, and I'm very hopeful that those models are going to get better, the open source models, because they have to be open source for you to even do that, run them at all, download and run them. I'm hopeful that we're going to have by the end of this year some model that's capable enough, like as capable as Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I think that's possible, that then you can run on a laptop. You're going to need some, you know, resources. Like you're not going to probably get away with 64 megabytes of normal RAM, no GPU, and, you know, 8-core, you know, Intel processor. You're probably not going to do that.
I have 16, so
Yeah, you
16
might.
gigabits.
And who knows, though? Again, by the end of this year,
Mhm.
who knows? Somebody's in a research lab right now coming up with one. But as of today, you know, even some people will send me a link, say, "Hey, this new model that's available through Olama, which lets you run them locally. I used it and it's great at coding." And then I try it the first couple of use cases. I'm like, it completely bombed. I don't know what you're coding, you know, and I just go right back to the Claude 3.5, right? So my answer right now is we're not there yet. we will be there at some point in the future. And you probably have to stick, if you're really interested in getting the best coding experience, you're going to have to stick with one of the proprietary models.
Okay, thank you.
I'm very opinionated here, Curtis. Maybe I can help you. So like this is deja vu to me. Like when the cloud just started, it was, oh, you cannot go to cloud, you have to do it on-prem. But then every cloud provider has these tenants that's only yours. So like you can treat Azure's tenant, AWS tenant, Google Vertex AI, so Amazon is Bedrock, Google is Vertex AI, as your own extension. I wouldn't bother hosting anything. It's a waste of life. Like the goal is here, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, to create the business value as soon as possible. Coming like from East Europe, like a young immigrant to Canada, I spend way more time installing Unix machines than programming. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like if you have to, like, I don't know what your business use case that you have to, but every company has already a cloud tenant. You can run those models that you want over there. So I don't know. That's only for personal development. That would be my answer.
Yeah, that's one. Like a lot of companies are concerned about privacy, right? Because when we're using like the APIs I was using, they say they won't use them to train models. They say ChatGPT is open game. Like if you're using ChatGPT, they can use your data to train future models. They claim that they won't use it when you're directly using the API, like through.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking Azure. So you would use Azure OpenAI. So
Well,
we
what I
never
was going to
use.
say is that right that when you use one of the cloud providers, you can get your own dedicated instance in the cloud.
Correct.
In the cloud.
That's
so you
not
can get
trained.
Claude,
And
you can get Claude, you can get OpenAI. Yeah.
you can get anything. Like if you want Llama, you can get it. Like, why bother setting up everything when Google Vertex AI handles Llama for you?
Yeah.
Like if you really want it, and it's your tenant. So treat you as your own data center. You don't need to have it locally.
Absolutely.
It probably depends on the run rate though, because some people don't want to spend $50 a day, right, or whatever it may be.
But okay, there is Cloud Run as well, serverless. Like I have to keep shutting down my Azure instances, but in Cloud Run I don't care. If I'm not using it, I'm not paying for it.
Yeah, I think unless you're a nerd, a real nerd into this, you won't do it on a local machine. You would just do it on the cloud or something of that sort. I mean, you want to get your business case as soon as possible, like you said.
Yeah, and it all depends on like what's your reason. Is your reason I don't want to pay anything? And for coding, we're not there yet, right? We're just not quite. Now you could do some of these workflows that I did for like planning. I'm sure that some of the local models would work for that kind of stuff. But when it comes to like really generating code beyond a simple Python script or simple, just simple code, I haven't found them to be. And then the second concern for people is that one's like, I want my own dedicated instance, right, of this thing. And most at least organizations are doing that because they have privacy concerns or compliance concerns or things like that, right? And then when you don't have it, you're like, I don't care. Like the stuff I develop, I'm like, I know I'm going to have to pay something, right? My time's worth something. So if I got to pay $50 a month in my personal case, right, I'm going to pay it. And if I run out of, I'm going to have to up it, right? Because otherwise I could spend hours and hours and hours trying to work around it, not be able to work around it. And I'm right back to paying anyway. I know this experience already, and it's just not worth it. I'm like, okay, how much am I getting? If I'm 10xing my time, right, which I am now, and we will get more, right, and it's costing me $50 a month, then I got to and it's not worth it to me. I got to question why I'm using it, right? It's like if it's not worth $50, it means it's not returning anything to me at all. So anyway, that's a little soapbox. Getting on, it's just we got to pay to play at this point if you're trying to code, right? You're going to pay somebody.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Any more questions, or we do Raffle now?
We're almost an hour over, so you better do the raffle.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, let me share the screen. Allow multiple presenters to replace current share. So I'm going to share the screen.
Yeah, Tim's still sharing, I think.
So let's see if I can take over. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, we got the slide on managing innovation.
Oh yeah, that's my back. This is kind of my 5 commandments, not 10 commandments, reminding me how to act in client's best interest always. That's like, if you're curious, this is Google's philosophy of work. So anyway, while you were talking, Tim, like this was the analogy that came. You're becoming really Taruk Maktub, like riding this huge beast of AI, and creating value, helping your people. So back to the wheel of names. I pasted all the names I saw at the time. Anybody here that does not see their name inside? I see David Rubin. Okay. Anybody else? Tim, I'll let you. There is always something to learn. Anybody else? Or are we going? 1, 2, 3. Good luck. So you will be getting free Manning publication product, any product of your choice. Nikhil, are you lucky or what? I know it's not. What happened here? Ashish, are you with us? Ashish, did you check
Not
out?
going anywhere.
So you're here. Okay, perfect. So share your email.
Otherwise, I was gonna say I'm right next to it. Prakash is very good.
But Ashish won. so Ashish, share your email address with me, and then I'll introduce you to the folks for Manning, and you're gonna claim your free prize. So I'll stop sharing. Any closing thoughts except that we are 1 hour over?
No, thanks, Tim. This was a great talk. Just from the coding perspective and also the all the thoughts that you mentioned, particularly from the architecture side. I mean, this like it felt like a coding talk, but it was more like an architecture and a different kind of talk. So it was very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation.
So whoever wants to stay can stay. I will stop the recording.
The school is like, what do you learn on this? Is that school website? It's free?
It's free right now. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so far, we're just using it mainly as a collaboration platform. So lots of people sharing a lot of great ideas, and we will. I'm trying to ramp it back up again. We'll have group calls. Sometimes group calls are on special topics, like things that are hot topics. Like we had one where we talked about this idea of adding context and working with context, stuff like that. And sometimes they're just like, we will open it up and say, hey, well, like Daniel did here, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the group, what you're interested in, why you're here, so we can help you out. It'll be those kind of talks. Shortly, I'm going to be adding, there's a courses section, and I'm going to be adding some content there. They're going to be more probably short courses, not these 40, 60-hour kind of courses, but I want to have a lot of these short courses on topics like this. Like, okay, how would you work with MCP inside a cursor, for example? Well, and all the tips and tricks and things like that. So that's the plan. Just got to get there. I'm sure that once we get going on it, and maybe some other folks will contribute as well to it. But that's the idea, is we get together like this, and you have a sort of a forum where you hear about new things. You can ask questions of community members about certain things, and everybody's kind of there for the same reason, to learn about AI for software engineering.
And courses will be for fee or for free? What's the
I have not. It may depend. It may depend.
Okay.
I'm kind of working that out at the at the moment. So there has to be obviously a monetization over there somewhere.
Definitely.
So I don't know. There'll probably be a combination. I would guess there'll be some things that are going to continue to be free there, and especially if I keep the community completely free. Even if I go to paid, by the way, it's always a free for life. So the moment you join, you're locked in free forever. It's not like I come back to you 2 months from now if we turn into a paid community and go, now you got to start paying. So I haven't gotten there because I haven't decided whether I'm going to go there, because there's not enough content there, right? I don't feel like you can just say, hey, pay to come to this community so you can collaborate with people. So I'd say, well, you could have just, still a community anywhere, and done that. So we're not there yet. So, I mean, long story short, I'm working out strategy about these other things to do, and working with, some folks on different things, even outside of the community, and I need to free up some time to work on that though. I'm working with some clients and stuff like that. So I hope that's enough. It's going to evolve. There's going to be more there. At the moment, that's where we're at. It's really about staying in the know and asking questions and getting help with things, presenting your own ideas, all that kind of thing. Joining some calls like this there on the community. Once in a while, I'll do polls. Let's see where everybody's at, what the topics are, what the questions are that people are concerned about, what they're using, all that kind of stuff. You can see that.
Thank you again for visiting, doing this LCO at Skool, and looking forward to collaborating
Thank
with
you
you
for the
and
reaching out
everybody
to me,
else.
Daniel, for this. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
First question for you. I am really new to this methodology. It's really interesting. It's actually OpenAI, but I was thinking, how can I get started with this methodology? It's like learning and actually doing it, like just like your demo. Is there any resources?
Yeah, it depends. Well, there's not one. That's why I need to really create. I really need to create a short course on this, right? Because I'm kind of like demonstrating. I need to create something that's methodical, a little bit. And the way I'm thinking about this too is that it always depends too on what the person's goals are, what they're trying to do, and also depends on where they're starting from. And the reason I say that is because like the community that we have is there are people who have never coded in their life. There are a few of those that are getting into coding or interested in it. And there are some that are, been doing software engineering development for 30 years, but they haven't started into learning to use AI. That's a different where you start and how I would tell you to start and learn. And then there are people who have started using AI and they're software engineers. So you get my point. It's like, it depends on where are you right now? Are you a software engineer, a very experienced software engiare?
Yes, 2 years of experience.
Okay. And how much have you used AI in your software engineering work so far?
Like 20%.
So which AI, give me a sense of like which AI tools you've used and what you've done with them.
Mostly for like full stack, using it for creating routes, front ends, some backends, some servers, databases, and things like that. Not that complex, but
Are you
yeah,
using
we
Cursor or what are you mainly using?
mainly use cloud and GPT.
Oh, so you're basically using the chat bots to help you with that, or then?
Yes, yeah. We don't at work. We don't have any compiler or anything like that. Any autocomplete.
Will they allow it? Will they allow you to?
No.
No.
Okay. There is workaround there. So I was helping NASDAQ last year, and they don't allow external services. But again, they're in Amazon, and Amazon has Bedrock, and Bedrock has Sonnet 3.5. And then there is open source plugin for Visual Studio called Continue.dev. It is so easy to use. You will feel right at home. And that's your first start before you move to these tools. Right now, I'm introducing Continue.dev to Siemens because it's so simple to use and feels intuitive, and you get more models that are internally hosted on tenants of the company than with Google, what is it called, GitHub Copilot. So that would be your first start. Then you graduate that and move on to Teams thinking.
Yeah, it is, and that's exactly what I've recommended people who say, "Hey, we don't have a governance strategy around AI and stuff like that." And my thing is, it sounds like you're worried about security, you're worried about privacy, and that's exactly right. But you trust AWS, right? Because you're running your financial apps in AWS, so you got to say you trust them. Don't say you don't, because it's just another program, right? Really,
yeah.
comes down to
and
it.
we've been there. Like, why the people raising same question from 10 years ago? The problem is solved. You're in the cloud. That's extension of your data center. Use whatever you have. With ChatGPTs, you're not going to use it. You're going to use Azure. You can provision all your AIs you want. I'm using with O3 Mini nowadays, because that's what they have until I get Sonnet 3.5.
What I will say though, that if you're only interested in if you're mainly interested in using it for that kind of workflow part that we were talking about, and that I did it something like what I was doing in Claude, right, where you're basically saying, "Hey, help me ideate on an architecture tech stack, help me create some stories, issues, tickets, whatever you want to call it." That's, I mean, if you can access ChatGPT plus, then you're fine there. But then the same companies who will say, we don't have data governance. I said, but you're letting your employees run wild with ChatGPT. What training have you given them? And they're like, none. I'm like, that's worse than having no strategy in place, guys. But anyway, I mean, long story short is if you have access to those tools and they're saying you can use them, obviously being careful about sensitive data, right? That goes through there. No API keys, nothing like that, no security, private IPs, none of that stuff. Then you can use something like those prompts. What you can do is you could feed it like that workflow prompt that has, hey, I'm ready to like initiate this new project and I've got the idea and I want to go all the way through to like planning some sprints. Well, you could feed it that workflow prompt and the vision prompt or whatever, work through that, right? Have it generate the document, stuff like that, then go on to the requirements and then use that prompt. So you could use the same workflow, but once you get to the code, I mean, really, like what Daniel was saying, pretty much is your only, so that's your own ramp from that point where you're just doing planning, ideating and stuff like that to now I'm actually implementing. There's no substitute in the world for having your AI assistants have a powerful coding model plus visibility to your code. That's what you lack with the coding with these chatbots is they don't have visibility into your code and you're in copy paste land anyway, and it's just unworkable. Really. I mean, the productivity gain is minimal when you get to, in my opinion, there. So you've got to get like something like Continue.dev or Aider. Aider also plugs into almost every LLM, frankly, and cloud, Azure, AWS, everything. So that or Continue.dev that lets you like bring your own and then host it in whatever cloud provider that your company trusts, whether it's Azure, AWS, whatever. And then you've got your own dedicated version. And your story there then is, but you trust the vendor and you trust every other service that they offer. Why would you not trust their dedicated LLM? Makes no sense, right? And then you come back to the, how do I integrate all of these kind of tools and contexts and stuff like that? But you got to have that first. Yeah, just like Daniel said, you got to put that as step one. You got to get your company to say, I need a tool, I need a coding LLM. Let's get that set. And then you come back.
Nice, thanks.
Good luck. Sorry, John, I know you're still at work. I need to go home.
No, it's okay. I'm sitting here doing my timesheet as I'm listening. It's a great conversation.
Oh, okay.
When you said at work, you mean he's literally in his office.
He's literally at work. I recognize that office. So Tim, like we never got to chat outside of this. Now that I know, I'm not worried about John. He's doing timesheet. Overtime probably because of us.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. So you mentioned your digital nomad. Like I only once had somebody from Albania calling. Are you at home now or you're traveling somewhere? Like how does that work in the lifestyle? Yeah, did you mention
so right now I'm temporarily, it's supposed to be more temporary. So the backstory is that my wife and I sold our house going on 4 years ago now.
Wow.
Bought a truck, bought a fifth wheel or RV, and we just started moving around the country, the US, and whole East Coast and then out west to the Rockies. And if you've never traveled from that Montana and up into Canada too, is we wanted to go out to Banff and we just didn't make it, but Montana down south, that whole stretch of that just great. We would actually pull the RV up in the middle of nowhere, like off-grid camping in the middle of the Rockies on the side of a cliff, and we'd be up 7,000 feet, right? And thank God for Starlink, right? Because you get in those areas, there is no cell phone connection as soon as you leave any town. And work from there. And we would move like every week and a half or something like that. And we did that for 2.5 years. And most of it was off grid like that. But we ended up coming back to Maryland a little bit ago, and we were supposed to only be here for a couple months. And then one thing led to another. And so we haven't left yet. So we're still in Hagerstown, Maryland. Someone said they're in Ellicott City. Was that Prakash? Who was that? That was.
Yes, that's me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm not very far up the road. We sold our house in Frederick, Maryland, by the way. Yeah, so I was Maryland resident, but now we're Texas residents. We don't have a house. We don't own property, so we can be residents, wherever.
That's nice.
But it's fun if you ever get a chance to do it. I mean, it's
yeah, that's a thought that I had too, but yeah. So sounds like very adventurous life there.
It really is. I mean, it's a lot when you're still working, you know, and then you have to, because you have to then set up, right? Get everything out because you can't travel with everything out. You got to like put everything away when you leave. And then when you get set up again, you got to pull everything out. And I got to unpack the Starlink and take it out and find a spot where it works. And, you know, and then go work and then you also want time to actually do things where you are and see the place. So, but it was fun.
Wow. Nice. And how long have you been with PBS? That's a good place.
2016, 8.5 years.
Wow. This
Yeah.
is nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Really enjoy it. So you can tell, I mean, I really enjoy the stuff. I think that just trying to get more and more folks to kind of like wake up and embrace it. I just heard, you know, just this week again, IT manager was like, yeah, we're behind and we know we got to do something, but other companies are also behind, so it's okay. I'm like, okay.
You know what I'm noticing? Like we are talking about AI getting smarter and smarter, but we are limited to our own intelligence and creativity. What comes to mind? So for me, when I first saw it, it was like we're similar experience in the business, but it was like sweater upside down, and I felt to love it. Like it's such a fresh view at what you can do with AI. And so it's really like your creativity and intelligence limiting people now. If you ask it nicely, it's going to do it for you.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we talk about integration and usually people think about, oh, software integration, but it's integrating us into the process too. And we are the creative force behind it, right? People say, well, AI can be creative too, despite what people say, but not the creative in the way we're talking about it, right? Right here, like creative is not going to come up and say, oh, I just came up with this great idea of how you could use me and all of my other AI friends.
So,
you know?
So maybe my metaphor of Taruk Maktoum avatar was wrong. Maybe it's more like suit of Tony Stark. You put your AI suit and then go into battles.
Yeah, it's something like that. And some days, like you just saw, I mean, sometimes it's like, probably I cursed myself because I said, oh, AI demo gods be with me, because I know what happens sometimes in demos. I'm like, sure enough, 10 times in a row, Claude Desktop, boom, 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 works perfectly. First time in the demo, it's like, hey, I'm not gonna pay attention to your prompts.
These days, when they were talking about DeepSeek, so I downloaded a small version to run it locally. And I asked a silly question, tell me purpose of life in one sentence. It went over and over, like analysis paralysis, like pages and pages. Should I say this? Should I say that? It reminded me of me when I'm stuck to understand client's problem.
And it's interesting too that now OpenAI said, you saw what Altman was saying. It's like everybody was saying, hey, but DeepSeek is reasoning. It's like, yeah, we actually need to actually show more of the reasoning. And I was like, I don't know that I want to always see that. Can I just turn that off?
But it's not bad. Like yeah, you can turn it off. If it's an API, it's a separate feed, so you can.
No, I'm just talking about in ChatGPT. Hopefully they don't go to that level, because I did the same thing. I downloaded R1 and I asked it. I gave it a fairly complex Python. And it's going to create in one script. It's not going to like do modular whatever necessarily, unless I. But anyway, so I gave it that, and it just, like you said, it just went on and on. And I saw everything. It was like, what? Here, I think I got the solution. Oh, wait a minute. No, now it's on second thought.
Yeah, I loved it. It was just so human, like confusion about, but that's, how can I say purpose of life in one sentence? It's such a complicated topic. Maybe it's this. It depends on that. Let me try again.
So as a developer and as a very curious person in AI, I wonder how far you think we are from being able to just wear a hat, GPT hat, and having direct communication with our consciousness. Like as soon as we have question, the GPT answers us right there, like a network connection over there.
Actually.
Because many times answers from GPT are better than mine. So with my consciousness, with my executive part of my brain, I should be able to tell, okay, I'm going to go with GPT's answer and tell that. So with direct connection there. So I'm thinking, sometime in the future, that's probably going to be possible. Like, I don't know how far we are, we may be on it.
That's a new species we're creating, argument humans.
Doesn't seem impossible at all, really. I think at some point in the future, it's definitely possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing, right, no matter how it goes, even if you've had the like chip in your GPT, whatever, it won't be GPT, but chip in your brain that's just embedded in reading your thoughts. And it's like, okay, now I want you to do something for me. The one part that's always going to be our responsibility is having the thoughts, right? There's no substitute for that. And that's why when people say, we're just going to hand it off to complete autonomous agents and they're going to run the whole world. Well, what you're doing is you're delegating every decision.
Mama figure.
Right. You're saying, you know what's best for me, even before I know what's best for me. No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we do that in some sense. Like, we don't make all decisions consciously, right? Like, we are not consciously deciding to, like, my heart is not, I'm not deciding every bit. Okay, I'm going to beat again. I'm going to beat again. That's just second nature, right? So there might be things like that, like the habits or things that we don't actually need to decide on that could be done anyway, like routine things. I wake up and drink coffee, for example, right? I didn't really need to think about it. I mean, where the GPT hat, I just wake up and as I walk around the kitchen, I just drink coffee without being too much aware about it, which is okay, because I drink coffee every day anyway. I might be okay with delegating that part.
Or maybe it senses that you're really feeling down or you're feeling tired and it automatically gives you suggestions, or maybe it, I don't know what it does for you.
Your body does it,
Turns on your jacuzzi tub. I don't know. It says, hey, maybe you should get in here. I've already got it going.
I'm still recording. Watch out what you're gonna say.
I don't know. It's an interesting future, that's for sure. It's interesting now, right? It's just that a lot of people aren't playing.
We are so lucky to live in this time. It's the worst and the best of the world at the same time. I cannot believe like what's happening. Like, it's so much evil and so much beauty in AI.
Right. Exactly. That's right. And it depends on who's at the helm, unfortunately.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better, Daniel. Yeah, it is exactly my thoughts.
Yeah. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And I think that's it's like, wow, if we had the right people in charge, what possibilities we now could have in front of us. So maybe it's still possible.
But that's another meetup topic.
Yeah,
so
let's do that.
We should stop here. And I will see you inside your community. Thank you so much, team. I learned tons from you, and I wanted to share that excitement with the rest of the community. So hope we succeeded. You're going to get more members.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're curious.
All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. So
thank you, team. Thank you, Daniel, for the session. Very informative.
It's been an inspiring talk. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers.
Always.
time.
Bye.